Greetings, listeners. Welcome to How the World Should Work, the podcast with a purpose, where we talk about things that actually matter. This is your host speaking, author, journalist, and otherwise aimlessly wandering millennial, Matt Shao. I'll be hosting alongside my good friend Johnny here. As many in my generation can probably relate to, and many who aren't, I spent several years after college trying to navigate the endlessly frustrating world of business to carve out what I was told was a successful life for myself. 6 years in the insurance industry, followed by a year of owning a small business, made me feel like I was on a decent track. Until August the 4th, 2015, when my world was turned upside down. That was the day I lost my mother and best friend, and suddenly every priority of mine completely shifted. I began to look at life from a totally different angle, and as a result, decided to drop everything and pursue writing. A dream my mother had pushed me towards my entire life, but one I was always too scared to chase. Fast forward 2 years, and I'm now a published author, a columnist at my local newspaper, an ever-growing blogger, and now we have a podcast. Which brings me to the point at hand. Here you'll be listening to topics pulled from various themes and motifs from my main writing project, the Continuity series. Although the primary purpose, as with any work of fiction, is to entertain, it also serves as a platform to express many of the thoughts and feelings we all seem to have with this crazy world we're living in. From deeper issues like social equality to lighter things such as modern dating, we'll be covering a wide array of things that we all seem to think about but don't seem to talk about very frequently. So with all that said, allow me to introduce our co-host, Mr. Gentleman Johnny Wiggins.
My name is Jonathan Wiggins. I've decided to join this project because I truly believe in what it stands for. Our goal here isn't to use this as a soapbox, so all you can just hear us talk. Instead, we hope that by talking about these issues, we can help create a better awareness of the things that affect our lives. By talking about these issues that we otherwise tend to ignore, I think we'll get a much better understanding of them, which can help us apply this newfound understanding to our lives in a meaningful way.
Greetings, listeners. Welcome back to How the World Should Work. This is episode number 7. Cultural evolution. Today we are going to talk about life. We're going to talk about our reality and how the world as we see it has been changed and morphed and evolved based upon advances and changes and discoveries in science, technology, culture, social studies, religion, and whatnot, and so forth. So, the way that this applies to the Continuity series is, it's really, I say this, I feel like every episode, but it's kind of what the story's all about.
I mean, why we do this.
The story is about, the coming of age for people and humanity, and it's, all of this is going to be much more evident when the second book comes out, but I don't want to spoil anything as always, but so yeah, that's what it's about. It's about humanity growing up, basically, and shedding, all of the sticks and stone throwing that we've been doing, and hitting each other with rocks and whatnot, and getting along and joining the intergalactic country club, if you will. And they have rules in the country club, so. But there is a quote that I found. There weren't many. I just Googled quotes on cultural evolution, and Google Machine told me there were 4. And this one is by Warren Eister, who I have absolutely no idea who this is, but it's Eyster, and apparently, I guess he's a writer, because it says Warren Eister, the Goblins of Eros. But it's a good quote. Throughout world history, all freedom has been no more than repetitious abolishment of what has already been abolished. There is no end to the killing of weeds. End quote. And I actually think that that is a really good statement, because how they say history repeats itself? That's pretty true. I mean, if you look back on our historical timeline, you look back at, we've said it before, it's like humanity is basically civilization is really one big, long timeline of people doing stuff to have fun, somebody coming in and saying, this is how y'all have to act now, it's my world, to the point where they get away with it for a little while, and then some dudes come in, they knock him on the head, they're like, no, we're going to free ourselves, and then they just rinse and repeat and repeat and repeat, and that happens over and over and over and over. And here we are today, 300 years ago, we had the American Revolution, where they batted Great Britain away, the redcoats and everything. And today, you hear a lot of the same sentiments, probably, what was going on back then. It's like, oh, we got too many rules, we got too many laws, we can't do this, but we can do that, this is how you live. And, let's be honest here. I mean, who has not heard talking, in the corners of the bars and whatnot, and, in the shadows of revolution and, people joking about it. So,
Right.
So, we are going to start out with a basic, just an overview of where we've gone, how we've gotten to today. So, I sent out a template to you guys. Today, we have Chad Grindstaff with us again, thank you. Johnny the Gentleman, and Will is here, as always. So, let's get started. Will, what did you learn when you looked at our historical timeline? Where did we begin, where did we go, and where are we now?
From what I've found, and from what I just know from, public education, is that we really kind of started we started out as hunter-gatherers, as I feel like we all know. We looked for big game, and the men went out and hunted all the big elk and deer, and the women and children stayed behind and gathered up plants and fruits, vegetables, stuff like that. And we were that way for most of the beginning of humanity, really until about 10,000 years ago. And really, I mean, a lot of people think that the hunter-gatherer society was fairly simple. I feel like that it was
Sounds kind of fun.
What?
It sounded kind of fun.
It did sound kind of. I mean, it does sound kind of fun. It sounds like a cool. You go out and you kill your food and you bring it back in. You skin it. Hell, they would skin it and then they'd make lean-tos and huts and stuff out of the skins. Anyway, so they would they used everything they gathered, and so they would use, like I said, the skins for building their housing, really. And they had a lot more, I wouldn't say complicated, but a lot deeper of an economy than I feel like people realized, because they weren't just going out and living by themselves in the small groups they lived in. They had established villages and city. Well, they weren't really cities; they were villages. But the nomadic part of it, when you had 30 people living off a certain area, you had to have at least, it was estimated they had anywhere from 7 square miles to about 500 square miles of territory. So and they were mostly families that would travel around, but they were kind of intricate because the nomadic tribes would go around and they'd be hunting and gathering, and they'd go from place to place as the supplies exhausted themselves, and then they may stop at a village or a city that has posted up somewhere on a river where the resources were more abundant than usual, and they would trade with them, and they would kind of integrate the domesticated, because hunter-gathering ended when we learned to domesticated animals, and when we learned agriculture, when we learned to farm.
Yeah.
So even after that, I mean, they're still around today. Aborigines in Australia, even though they have integrated into Western life, still somewhat hunter-gatherer. There are tribes in Africa. Some of them islanders.
I mean, you see like a random Newsweek article where it's like, we found another undiscovered. Like it happened. I don't know when the last time that happened was.
I think the Aborigines.
But but it is still possible. I mean, we look at today. It's like we've discovered every nook and cranny of the globe. But I mean, maybe we haven't.
They still hide themselves
away.
away.
But yeah, that is so. When did you learn, or any of you guys learn, how long ago did we harness the ability to grow crops and, and tame, as, shout out to last episode, our animals, and, how long ago was that? I didn't, and if you didn't get to that point in the research, that's fine, that's just kind of a curiosity.
All I have is that it was about 10,000 years ago when agriculture and animal domestication began in Southeast Asia and Mesoamerica. So around 10,000 years ago would be when that was. Yeah. Okay.
Well, Johnny, what did you pull up on that? Anything?
Nothing I want to add. He covered pretty much most of it, but I mean, the essentials, the food and the water, and how we've moved from there to where we are today. We can go down to the store and buy from a merchant exactly what we need.
Can you imagine getting into a trial of manhood with us today versus one of them. Like, imagine the crap they could do. It's like, we can't even go out. Like, how many of us know how to start a fire, for example? Like, all these masculine, you know what I mean? Like, how conditioned and, like, babied are we to...
Can you start a fire without a match?
That's why I really like the
so.
survival, like, classes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's really... Because it is. I mean, it is an instinctual test of masculinity.
It really is.
To be able to have these abilities and all this stuff and be able to provide and do this, you know, like, if society collapsed, that's really, I think, kind of this whole time we need to keep this in mind. Like, if society was to collapse, right, and it was The Walking Dead, like, what would happen to you? You know, like, where would you...
What are you prepared for?
Where would you end up, you know, and what could you do? What do you have to offer me now? It's like,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
how many divorces would we see and how many, you know... And I just think that it's fascinating to think of it that way, and you know, just basic survival instincts. But but before we get into our next, Chad, what about you? Open-ended in terms of the the history and the evolution. Did you want to add anything to that?
Not particular, nothing really to add to it.
Okay. So one of the main things I think, in terms of that same theme, I want to talk about just for a minute here is how culturally, because again, this is cultural evolution, how we've evolved culturally. So I think, kind of going in line with that is really how we've governed ourselves, right? How we've shaped and molded our society, you know, and how we went from what you're explaining, the hunter-gatherers to, you know, and moving forward, to get if we were to link that to today, you know, we got several steps. We had the hunter-gatherers where we developed into basic villages and tribes. Then we developed into basic, you know, kind of mini-city civilizations and whatnot. And then as we, you know, technology advanced, we developed into feudal, like a feudal. Well,
Okay.
you saw the rise.
Gotcha.
You saw the rise of the empires, like, you know, Alexander and all these great, like Mesopotamia, all these things. And then you saw a lot of the European things, like where they started developing into the nobilities and like lordships and that kind of feudalism, you know, and that kind of, and then that it further evolved into, you know, then eventually the kings and the dictators, and then finally, you know, you get the free will, and you get further down the road into democracies and self-governing and you know, so it's really fascinating to think about that, isn't it? You know, to think about how far we've come as a species
in a relatively small amount of time.
Yeah, in the blink of a cosmic, the cosmic blink of an eye. So, what I think one of the main things that I'd like to again talk about is where do we go from here? I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because I know we're still at the beginning of the chat. But Johnny, I'll start with you. Based on today, how do you, I guess, if you were to look at that timeline that we just discussed and just zoom out, and you're looking at that whole thing, you know, and here we are at the end today, like, what is your perspective of that? What are your thoughts on that, and where do you see, where could that go?
That's something I always think about. I always find myself thinking about every once in a while is look at all this that we've obtained and that we've learned and that we know today, how far we've come and how far that we still have to go, because when you think about it, this is just, we're still kind of at the beginning. We've got so much ahead of us, and it's just it's kind of scary because you don't really know what turn it's going to take and what the future holds for us. But at the same time, the advancements and the technology that we've created and the society that we have created today, I think it only gets better from here. But who am I to say that? I guess we really don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see what's up.
It is really, isn't it? It's like,
it's
doesn't it
intriguing.
kind of like spark some kind of like energy within you? It's like so exciting, just to kind of like imagine. This is where you like talk about like there's dreamers and there's thinker. Like this is one of those things where like you can do some serious dreaming. Like this is you've got a broad blank canvas you've got a future, right?
Right.
An entire timeline, and we're in control of that. We're as a society, as a civilization, as a species, we are in control of that future, and our cultures are created. It's so easy in to get caught up, and this is why this whole how the world should work thing is all about open-mindedness, right?
Right.
And it's about the ability to step outside the box and look at and just view the way things are done and see how things can change. Things do not always have to function the way that they function now.
Right.
That's true.
And these types of conversations, these are what shapes. This is what shapes the future. So, Chad, what do you think? I mean, in terms of what dreams, where does your imagination take you when it comes to this type of context?
Not to really a good place.
A light switch.
Uh,
Not to a good place.
Typically,
Elaborate.
there's a lot of ways the future could go wrong in a bad way for us, and I think there's just a few ways that it could go right.
Okay.
So, I think about this kind of stuff a lot, like where we came from, what did we learn from the past,
I like this.
what should we do that they did, what should we not do. It's a valuable conversation to have, for sure.
Well, what do you think? What do you think has contributed to that point of view? Like, I don't want to say cynicism. I would actually probably call it realism.
Yeah, more
What do you think?
approach.
What do you think has contributed to that? Just viewing, what's happened in the past.
Yeah, just my own eyes and just kind of listening to what people have to say. Just different kinds of people.
So, like, I guess, because I really like to dig into that because I think your point of view is probably one that a lot of people would hold, to be honest. Admittedly, in fact, even on my, I think on my Tinder profile, it says like unreasonable optimist. Like I am an unreasonable optimist. I always, and that's I blame my mom for it. She always instilled that in me. But like, I am an idealist, and I do like to, and like Carson is in the story. It's like I want to think that there's a potential and a possibility that reality may not dictate as possible, right?
Sure.
Because humans, basically, because #humans. But so do you think that do you think that cynicism or whatever you want to call it, realism, is because of time, like what we have done? Like, what if you look back, it's like actions speak louder than words, right? What have we done as humanity? And you're right, we're riddled. Our past past is riddled with destruction, with war, with corruption, deceit. So would you say, do you think, what is the stem of that belief for you?
Yeah, certainly to a degree, for sure. I think there's a need for optimism, for sure. You can't just have just a bunch of
sad people.
People.
Yours.
And I'm not necessarily apathetic. I'm not apathetic about it. I engage in it, but I think my engaging in a discussion like this is, and not here clearly because we're all interested in this, and the listeners listening are too. But the amount of people that don't really care or don't think bad things can happen is what
Okay.
kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies.
What allows the prevalence of evil to kind of control our. So okay, so let me try and wrap that up into a. So you're saying we just don't really care as much as we should. Kind of.
A lot of us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us would disagree with that.
No, yeah.
I don't think any of us would, because we are. I mean, we're a competitive species. We've said it all the time. I mean, we are wrapped up in our own worlds, and it's so hard enough as it is already to, control our own daily lives and the chaos in our own lives, to even cut out time, to consider these things. But And that might be a reason that nothing has changed. You know, that might be a reason that has caused the the powers that be, that it's so easy for them to control things, because you're right, it's a big task to think about, you know.
And
Johnny?
that goes along with what I was thinking, is a lot of people don't realize the impact that they could have on society today and the world itself. Because anyone can change the world. It doesn't take a special person. It's literally anyone here today. And until people realize that, there's not going to be any change.
MVC, right there, already. Most
Right.
most valuable comment.
Wow, good for
You know,
you, Johnny. That was early.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm so. He always. It's always
gets
Johnny.
it.
Yeah,
I know, right?
You know.
The
It's
quiet
always
ones,
Johnny.
you gotta watch out for.
He's.
them.
But I'm so glad you said that, because every single human being ever that we've idolized, ever, you know, Alexander, hell, Jesus, you know,
Right.
they were all human beings. They were just dudes. You know.
Some would argue.
Okay,
that about
Jesus. Okay, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not Jesus.
100%
But yeah,
dude.
but he was
Well,
a dude.
he was, but you
Yeah, see,
know what I
okay, the
mean.
pastor said it.
Well, yeah, he was a dude. You know what I'm trying to say, though.
Yeah.
There's a whole paradigm there, but
He
Yeah.
was. I mean, I'm
He's-
serious. He was limited.
He's just a
My
man.
point is, he was limited by
humanity.
the world and the realm
Yeah.
and reality of dudedom. You know.
Dude-dom.
yeah,
You know, he was not God. He did not control.
Right, yeah.
Although he did walk on water.
He did do that.
You know, but that God enabled him to do that, right?
and he's 100% man, 100% God.
Okay.
He's got a lot
Well,
of
maybe
salt on
okay.
his
Let's. So maybe.
So we're not Jesus, but
He's a
You
complicated
get the point.
person.
Okay, so like Sun Tzu, okay, Alexander the Great. Who else? You know, chime in here. Karl Marx. No, I'm just kidding. But all of these people that we look back at, even I mean, seriously, like Hitler, like all these, like in what is the term J.K. Rowling says in Harry Potter? Voldemort did terrible things, but great things. Like great, not in as in good, but great as in like the magnitude of the waves that he caused were absolutely astounding. And all of these people were no different. They were made of the same stardust as you or me, you know? And that's why I'm so glad that Johnny just said that. Because imagine if people got that. And not even if more people got
Just,
that.
yeah.
You know, not everyone. Imagine
Higher
if
percentage.
more people really, truly... In the Young Pope, there's a line in there where he's asking one of his nuns, right, if she understands one of the statements that he made, and he goes, she comes to him and she says, "I understood it." He goes, I don't want you to understand it. I want you to perceive it, like feel it, like
Right.
I want it to transgress your entire body. Like you just have to understand it from within. That is true. And if more people could really get it, you know, and not just say they get it, imagine what we could do. Imagine how much this world really would change.
You could start heading in the right direction.
You know? It's like it gives me chills just to like think about. Hell. I don't even know what I want to talk about next now. I'm so excited about this.
Somebody's going to do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Somebody's
saying.
Gonna do it. It's that energy. Just make sure that energy is harnessed by the right thing.
Right,
Because
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a lot of energy.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Somebody's
Some-
going to
yeah.
take off.
It
with
can go wrong very
You know?
quickly.
It could be the best thing in the world, or it could be the worst.
Speaking of which, and by the way, this episode was also sponsored by Kofifi. And the did you guys see the video, the Trump Braveheart video? Oh my god!
I don't think I
We
saw
always,
that
you know,
one.
we always try to interject
I'm
these little
behind.
funny. There's a video they did of Trump. He's like cutting off the head of PBS, and he's like, "You are fake news," and he throws like a match. You know, it's just really, it's
That's
so
just,
funny
yeah, that's just, that's
for everyone
awesome.
to make light of those things. You know, whatever your politics are, but those little videos. See, that's what makes life worth living.
Yeah,
It's
right.
a small
A good
thing.
meme.
Yeah. Will, what do you think? I want to ask you, in
Oh.
terms of dreams, where could we go? Like, what in cultural evolution? I want to hear y'all's thoughts on what parts of our culture, if you had the ability to change them, would you change?
You want me to answer where could we go or what should we change?
Well, I mean, just okay. Let me in general, just take it in any like for example, I read an article today that was making headlines. I'm sure a lot of listeners will probably have seen it. A guy Snapchatted in the United Arab Emirates a video of literally a chick wearing a mini skirt and a shirt, a cut-off shirt, like walking down a street.
That's dangerous.
And they freaking blew it. Like, it blew the lid off. Like, oh my god, she's getting blah, blah, blah. She got arrested
Yeah,
for wearing a skirt.
not
Where was
legal.
In
In the Middle East.
the Middle East.
Yeah.
So-
sad.
I think.
So, if you know...
Right there on like the Saudi Peninsula.
And not to step on any toes, you know, they believe whatever their beliefs are. I'm not saying that that's the wrong thing to believe, whatever. As long as the women comply with it and they're cool with it.
As long as
'cause
they're
I don't
not
think you should
forced,
ever
yeah.
oppress other people. But, like, what would you change? Like, little things like that. Like, think about it on a global scale. Here, there, anywhere.
I think, you know, I would definitely, I don't want to say I don't want to target that and say I would change that, but I do think in that part of the world, I would try and find a way to be like, hey, look, yes, they're women, but they're human just like you.
Right.
They can be plenty smarter than you. They can be plenty more athletic than you. Like, you know, don't make them hide themselves just because of their sex. You know, that is I wouldn't, you know, try and just straight up influence that, but that's something that in my eyes I feel like that faith should be able to kind of come into the 21st century, come into today's world. You know,
Take a back seat to human rights.
yeah, you know, I don't feel like they should be doing that. But honestly, the biggest change that I would make is just, I mean, and don't get me started on how, I mean, because there's no real way for me to say how we do this, but just getting along, you know?
Yeah.
Getting
Yeah.
along, getting past the fact that, you know, well, you know, he, she, it, we, they, getting past that, getting past, you know, rainbow flags and
Like,
abortion.
where none of that's even necessary.
Yeah, exactly.
Anymore. Yeah,
Getting to the point where it's just that's part of human existence, and suck it up, Buttercup, because you know we're not going. This is just how it's doing. And you know, I want to say,
Suck it up, Buttercup.
yeah, I know, right? I want to, you know, I want to say that as for where we could go, I'm going to quote a very famous toy here and just say to infinity and beyond.
Hell
Because
yeah.
I feel like as the human race,
Buzz
we're
Lightyear.
yeah, right. We're absolutely capable of anything we want to do. There's nothing that we can't do if we don't want to. It's just accepting the fact that for a lot of people, it's like accepting the fact that yes, we should allocate resources to this because it is necessary or at least going to be prevalent in the near future kind of thing. And no, we shouldn't put resources here. It's just the government's learning how they need to really kind of start putting things, and the people backing it going, all right, yeah, this is it. Coalesce,
Title
yeah.
of the
They
second
need to coalesce a little bit better. And I feel like, you know, as much as people are starting to focus on getting off world, I don't think we have our crap together enough on planet to start spreading it to the rest of the universe.
Well, that's why I want to get off the world, because this one sucks.
Well, yeah,
so
this
much.
one sucks, but right now with the
No, I
way
know what you're
with the way
saying.
we are,
Yeah.
the next one's just
One step
gonna
at a
suck,
time.
you
One step
know?
at a time,
Yeah,
right?
you know, get our world more united and more together, so that because once we go out into space, if we run into other life and stuff, we're not Russia, U.S., Britain, France, Spain, Afghanistan, Iraq. We're humans
Yeah.
from Earth.
Yeah.
That's who and what we are.
Yep.
And you know, when we start to realize that's another thing that needs to change. We need to realize that we are not our nationalities, we're not our race, we're not our names.
Gotta get this second.
We're just
I gotta quit beating around the bush.
we're just people. We're from the same planet,
That's
from
exactly
the same
right,
origins. And we need to get to a point of realizing that and just being like, hey, I can get along with you. I can get along with you. I can accept that a woman can be smarter than me and stronger than me. I can get past all that. And so yeah, in my opinion,
ego will remain intact.
yeah,
right?
exactly. And I think that's where we need to go.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, things are too
We're not anywhere close to that.
tumult. Yeah, we're
let's-
just not
I mean,
close
let's be
to it.
real.
And
We're not anywhere close
in
to
the
it.
near future, it's just gonna be more chaos.
So, yeah. I mean, what do you? All right, so anything you guys, if you had the omniscient power of a universe creator, you know, SimCity on steroids. Is there anything you guys in particular would do? Any tweaks that you would make, like today, to change, you know, culture? Anything? Obviously, that's a broad scope, but
You know,
but what heartstrings
Here
particularly do you guys have?
well, I mean, I know what I would like to see happen. Is that in essence the question? Because
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah, if in
I don't know if I
Chad's
want to take on the
in Chad's
the God
perfect
role. It's pretty-
in Chad's perfect
pretty
world,
Right.
What would it
Well-
What would it look like?
Not even I won't even shoot for a perfect world. I'll just say that a focus on family,
Okay.
a good, a family structure, and that you can interpret that in a lot of ways, for sure. But a family structure, I think, focused on would fix most of the problems in our world.
I like that.
I want to go ahead and just interject here, adding on to your point. Back to the hunter-gatherer thing. I mean, we've been there before. We've been at the. I know we're not there now, but we've been there before because a lot of those smaller groups were families. Because I mean, think about it. You'd have a male and a female, and it would just spread.
They were real close.
They were really close. Exactly.
You're talking so appropriately timed here.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones ish. You know, they're all about some families.
They
there,
are,
man.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
They are. The house is the first and foremost thing that you learn about people. It's like, what house do you represent? You know, what band are you flying? You know. So, but actually, I agree with that. I agree with that. I don't want to say there's a component of it I disagree with, but that familial mentality, and I guess it is kind of perspective, because breaking it down, you've got a civilization, you've got an inner city, you've got a smaller subculture, and it breaks all these. You can keep peeling back layers until you get all the way down to the family unit and the individual, right? It's just one way to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And every time you've got those silos, right? Like imagine a human being, an individual with a silo, and then a bigger silo encapsulating the family, and then a bigger silo encapsulating the neighborhood, and then a bigger silo with the city, and then a bigger one with the country, and then the globe, and then other. Like, as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, like, you always have that mentality and basic instinct to kind of network and have that sense of community and want to, and a lot of times that
Very
will,
social animals.
and that will cause clashing, because you've got that collective, spirit, and then you've got this other collective spirit, and if those two things clash, then for whatever reason, humanity has decided that violence is generally the best way to solve those clashes.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the disconnect that we need to. But in terms of what you're saying, I think I agree that the whole family, especially in today's culture, like the whole family, like the whole sentiment of family is kind of. I don't want to say it's dwindling, but it's definitely.
It's some weak sauce.
There's
certainly strong people out there, but culturally.
I mean, it is. It's really crumbling. The whole strong family unit.
And a big part of that is now,
Like how many people do you think nowadays eat dinner at the table? Like I don't because I'm not married, I don't have kids. How many people have dinner with their families at dinner time at a table without a TV on or anything? Like that to me is really the best illustration. Like when I grew up, my mom made sure that we did that.
Yeah.
That was like the one thing, the one requirement that we had to do.
We live in a world today where we have television commercials saying, "Hey, don't forget, you should do this. You should eat without technology."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that tells you anything.
Well, I mean, there are studies that have been done because that's a prevalent question. People, that's been asked in psychological communities.
But what is it? Do y'all know anything? Like, what is the answer?
I don't know what I've seen it. I've read it before. I know I have, but I don't know it.
Like, if I asked most teenagers on Facebook today if they ate with their families at dinner, what do you think most
Probably
would say?
get a no.
Do you think most would say no?
I bet most. Well, and not even necessarily because they don't want to, but because teenagers are so busy in that stage of life that they're
Yeah.
probably not at home around dinner time.
Because I honestly have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know how things have worked. Because when we were growing up in our generation, we were on like the precipice, like the very beginning of that technological. Like we didn't have cell phones. Most of us growing up as
I still remember those gray
So
bricks.
today it's like pretty much the status quo where they all have them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
now that we're in this position, has that changed?
As the
Because I've been removed from that whole culture completely.
That-
Sword,
that's-
for sure.
the family connectedness changed because of that.
No, I'm saying like, is that even normal anymore? Like my perception of reality is that it's normal to have dinner at the table.
Yeah, no.
Does that normalcy still exist today?
I would still call that normal in my opinion because I think most normal families want to sit
It's not
down.
ignorant the way to sound, but I mean,
I think because a mom and a dad like my okay. When I am a real grown up and have a family and a wife and kids and stuff, in my opinion, the way dinner will go is if we're all in the house, someone will be cooking and then it'll be finished, it'll be plated, it'll be put on the table. The kids will leave their cell phones somewhere else. And we'll sit down and we'll have dinner. We may not, talk a lot. We may not necessarily have a close, intimate dinner,
Right.
but we're going to sit down and have dinner together.
Okay.
And, I think that just at that aspect, I think it would still be considered normal to have dinner at the table, but I don't think it would be considered a regular activity.
Yeah. Okay.
So
it's not okay. So like I said, when I was growing up, it was every day. I mean, that
Yeah.
was the thing. Unless we went out, obviously.
Well, and even now, if it is a regular activity, like the 13-year-old who just got home from school is probably on his cell phone, not
Yeah.
paying attention to what's going on
Yeah.
at the table,
Okay, I think I
Yeah.
understand. Because for me, it was an event throughout the day that I knew was going to transpire.
It was like before
we
I went
were
to school.
going to have dinner every day.
Before I went to school, Mom, what's for dinner? Like,
Yeah.
what are we having tonight?
You
Like,
know,
what's the plan?
It's like you got the couple hours after school. Dinner's gonna come. You can go outside afterwards for a couple hours, maybe. Sun goes down. Okay, then it's bedtime. Whatever. So yeah, I don't know, and that's just another component of this whole cultural evolution that I think. That's again why I'm really glad Chad mentioned the family.
Yeah.
Component, because that's something for me at least, because I'm single. I mean, I don't have cause really to ever really think about that kind of stuff. But I mean, I can imagine how in a lot of neighborhoods and families and stuff, how that is a big concern, that we are kind of deviating from that being the status quo, that family strength, that bond being the the kind of the core of our
And that's
lives.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's special about America, like in the idea of respecting the individual, even in Western culture, but like specifically here, it's like the First Amendment is, or not the First Amendment. That's an earlier thought I had, but just the idea that the law has to protect each individual, and that individuals are seen as having value is a pretty. I think it's why we're great today, and it's why I think most of the problems can be solved. I think the biggest problems, I think the best way to solve them is to go right to the core of it, and it starts with being the best you,
Yeah.
and then that you can
The Gandhi
be, and then
approach.
going,
Mhm.
and then kind of
Making things
expanding
better
yourself
around you.
with somebody.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
I guess it is. You almost have to approach it as like an infectious disease. It's got to start somewhere, and you got to infect somebody else with that kind of spirit, and they got to infect somebody else, and then it's got to spread, and that's got to be. It's a very daunting thing to think about. It's like
responsibility.
Yeah.
It's like
Jesus.
it's not somebody else's fault. It's
right.
My
Because
own.
it's so easy. It's so easy to like wait and expect somebody else. That's why Trump. That's why I think it was so easy for him to dominate this elective cycle. It's like because we've gotten so complacent and so lazy.
Been thinking that word for the
So
past few minutes
waiting.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so like
complacent.
we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for like this savior that we've all been wanting to just storm in on a friggin' unicorn steed, like bear child, and just like destroy all the corruption,
Right,
and fix
yeah.
everything. And like he came and he presented himself that way, and we just freaking ate
just
it like it was
Oh, basically.
Dunkin' Donuts here on the
Yeah,
table,
right.
and to his credit, I mean, he's a masterful, I don't know what I don't want to call him. He's not a politician.
He does well on a stage.
He's a masterful, I don't want to say manipulator because that makes him sound bad.
He's a master negotiator.
But he's a
No, I wouldn't say
masterful. He's a
negotiator.
masterful, just social navigator, I guess.
He's got a good stage presence, is what it is.
He has
That's probably what it would be.
He
Charisma.
has an excellent charisma and
Yeah.
understanding of the human condition and the human psyche, and he deserves to be commended for that. And I believe that he does have the right intentions.
Yeah.
He does have. He comes from a world that a lot of us don't come from. Like with everybody says he started. He did get that $1 million loan to start his dynasty or whatever. But how many people I never got a $1 million loan.
Nuh-uh.
But but to his credit, the man has done some great things, and I think he does carry that presence. But the whole point of that is we were waiting on that. So it made it so easy for
Yeah.
him to just come in and just open the floodgates, and America just flocked to him, you know. And it explains a lot of how we got to where we are today. But yeah, I mean, talking about this and where do we go now? That's what, you know, that's kind of the whole point of this episode, is where do we take this, and not only where do we want it to go, but how do we get there once we decide where we want to go. And to me, actually, I want to ask you guys, like, because to me, the next step, like, if you look at our cultural evolution, basically we have these enormous, massive shifts in perception when we have these big scientific, and that's why one reason I wanted to focus on science and technology. So anytime we have a big, massive, like, philosophical change in how we perceive reality, like, for example, when we discovered that we weren't the center of the universe, everything changed. That was a game-changing event for every human being on the planet when they learned that, right? When the world wasn't flat.
Right.
Like, those kinds of things.
Some people still believe that, by the way.
Yeah, well, right.
Yeah,
but,
no,
you
it's
know,
just kind of ridiculous
some people
to think of.
believe that lizards also.
And chocolate milk comes
You
from
know,
brown cows.
did y'all see the Alex Jones song, by the way, that I posted today? Well, I'll show you that later. But, so yeah, every time one of those things happen, like when Columbus discovered the new, like the energy that sweeps over the population,
Everything,
it's just
yeah.
like it totally changes everyone's reality. So I always look at it as what's the next thing that's going to happen to us. And for me, in my opinion, and in my whole writing, you know, intention is the discovery that we are not alone in the universe. I think that is going to be our next big culturally evolutionary realization, you know, and it's going to cause us to really, we're all going to have to do some deep soul searching and decide, you know, what we think of our place in the universe once we realize that is a truth. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I mean, are you on board with that idea, or do you think that's kind of is it a crazy notion?
No, I mean,
How would you react? I guess so. How would Johnny? Let me start with you. How would you react if today, if everything all of a sudden, if that TV behind you just turned on all of a sudden because it was so important, and you saw a big banner like 9/11. Remember how that was? And it said breaking news. Freaking space aliens. You know, and Giorgio from Ancient Aliens is on it. It's like aliens. You know, like how would you react to that?
You know, it'd be a mix of emotions. I'd be excited for one because I'm big into you know, outer space and like I follow NASA on social media, if that tells you anything. So I'd be really excited first off, but then I'd be really scared at the same time because who knows how that's going to go? No one does. But I think it'd be those, and I'd be really curious to learn more about what's going on, our relationship with them, and so I'd love to say excitement, at the same time still scared of the idea, and
Reserved,
yeah.
reserved excitement, maybe, or
yeah,
careful.
I could put that.
Okay, but I mean, think of it like all of our, like during the day we're distracted by work, we're distracted by our relationships, but all of us, I think you guys can connect with this concept that I'm talking about. Like all of us, like late at night, after everything's happened, you're left with nothing. The TV's off, and it's just you and your thoughts, like the stuff that goes through your head. You know, I don't know if I've said this in a podcast. One of my favorite Bible quotes is a proverb, and it's "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." You know, that's really, because life is a game, right? And we all know it. You know, we all put on facades to achieve things and reserve and hold back to, you know, achieve things. But at the end of the day, what defines us is what we think of ourselves. what our internal inner dialogue is, right? And a discovery like that, imagine what would change in your own perception of your own, like your own consideration of what it means to exist, you know? Because I think humanity has a really big, and I always go back to this, the ego. Like, humanity's got a really big ego, you know? And if we made a discovery where we found out that it ain't all about us, you know, that to all these other civilizations, we're sheep, literally. We're the unintelligent, you know, and there's a component of that I wrote into the book specifically to achieve that feeling, you know, where you're taken and you're treated as we treat these other creatures on the planet, you know, because these other creatures, for all we know, these other creatures on the planet could be communicating with one another in whatever language or mechanism that they use to transfer information from one consciousness to the other. And when we harness them and take them and put them in cages, like, what are they thinking? What are they, you know, what's going through their heads when we do that to them? And when if there came a day where we discovered that could happen to us, how much would that change the way you think about yourself, you know? What do y'all think?
I think there'd be a lot of introspection, to be honest. At the same time, I mean, as spectacular as finding life outside of our solar system would be, I think at the same time it could be a massive disappointment. As crazy as that sounds, because if you think about it, when we think of an alien, you think of like a little green man, or you
Right.
think of anything you see
Hollywood.
anything you think through Hollywood. But I mean, the reality of it is, we find life outside of Earth, and for all we know, it could be just another planet full of humans. You know, adapted and evolved and adjusted for their environment and their planet. They may be a little bit bigger. Their skin may be a little bit tougher. They may have a third arm or something. You know,
Right.
But for all intensive purposes, you're looking at a human. And I think when a lot of people think, well, we're going to find aliens one day and they're going to be different life, you know, it's going to be some spectacular purple, you know, dude with gills and eyes that close differently, and they're thinking they may be wildly advanced. If we're to think that, you know, the universe started when it started and it's just been evolving ever since, at some point, I mean, they could be at the same point in their civilization as us.
Yeah.
And they could be just now finding us too.
You're right.
And I think a lot of people think, you know, once we find life outside of us, we not just find life outside, but we find technology outside of us, resources outside of us, like, you know. And so I think, I mean, it's not going to be a massive disappointment. It's going to be awesome. Like, let's be real. It's going to be, there is life on
In
another
one way
planet.
or the other,
Yeah.
it's going to be epic.
But I think at the
Good or
same
bad.
point, there's a part of it that's going to be a little bit disappointing, because I think we're probably just going to meet more humans.
We're going
you
to
know?
realize that
We're not so special.
We're not special.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're going to
yeah.
realize that it's not that big a deal. It's just life.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I think you're right, and I think biology is. I believe in, you know, a lot of the Darwinian theory of evolution and whatnot, and I think biology is a response to ecology and
Yeah.
our environment.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, if you look at how anthropologists ask how we developed into bipedal, two-legged thing, you know,
Right.
they look at it and they have all these theories. It was a response to, like, tall grasses where they had to see over them and they had to do all these things. And it was all just a response to their physical environment.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think there probably are some universal similarities to that. One thing that I do find fascinating is sensory perception, and how there's a lot of talk about different dimensions, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I haven't necessarily, I don't know if I've heard this somewhere, if I mean, this is something I've been thinking recently about injecting into my book somehow, but if you really think about what it is to exist and how we perceive the world, it's all based, and we've said this before, on sensory perception.
Yeah.
Like, we only perceive reality, what it is, based on our organs, because we can smell things, we can feel things, we can see things, hear things, and what is the other? Touch things.
Yeah.
Right? What if there was another something that we can't comprehend, that we don't have the organ to perceive?
Right. Yeah.
Imagine that.
I know. Yeah,
You know
I know
what I
what you mean. Yeah.
Like, imagine if there was another realm or dimension or another reality or something in existence
Yeah.
that we just simply don't know about, simply because we
don't
don't
have
have
the
the
perception
physical,
for it.
biological ability.
Anyway, yeah, I'm glad because and there's a portion of that called the of that book called The Invisible Soccer Ball, and it's that because in the theory, like we aliens come to Earth, right? And they call them the Twi'los, or that's just the name of the race.
Sounds like
And
Twi'leks to me.
yeah, you know, these aliens have evolved in such a way that their sight can't see things that are black and white, and it's just kind of eliminated. So they're watching a soccer match, and this
they can't see the
they
ball.
can't see the ball.
Okay.
So this whole time they're sitting there watching this soccer match, and all they see at first is a bunch of people running around on the field kicking, and at some point, you know, the ref blows the whistle and they go to the side and they throw some, you know, they do this with their hands, and they're sitting there on the sidelines like piecing it together, going, you know, well, clearly it's a sport. They're on teams because they've got different jerseys on, and they're got different, and you know, they realize there's certain positions because they're staying in certain areas of the field, and that each team kind of mirrors the other team. They've each got the same positions, but they can't figure out what they're doing because there's this just invisible. There's an invisible soccer ball,
Yeah.
and it takes one of the younger ones noticing a little that he watches every time the goalie dives or misses it, the net bulges in a round
yeah.
way.
So they can use context clues.
Yeah, and he goes, well, what if there's a ball? And, you know, so that's actually a pretty good, the fact that maybe we just don't have the sense to,
Yeah.
you know.
It's like when they say, how do you describe the color red to a blind person?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
Well,
how
it
do
looks
you
like
do
a
it?
rose. Well,
It's,
okay,
what's
a rose?
Yeah.
You know? Chad, I'd like to get more of your thoughts, because I know I think you have a different perspective, not because of maybe because of the religious background, but in terms of that discovery. Like, if we discovered, you know, what would your reaction be? How would you, like, what are your just general thoughts on that?
I mean, it'd be terrifying.
Take the floor, yeah.
I think that would be my main.
Terrifying,
thing.
like, in what way?
Every way, in every way possible
Yeah.
to think of. I think it'd be a terrifying. Like, it's just because it is. I think anything unknown, especially like that, is like talking about paradigms. Like, that's a paradigm shift. You know,
That's the one,
Oh, yeah, it
really,
really
I
is.
think.
You know, some people that can completely, you know, they could enslave, they could
Yeah.
kill, and I'm like, because like something I think about, you know, like who are the people that would show up, you know, and
Right.
there's all kinds of takes on that in like science fiction and stuff.
God, can you imagine if we were the guys that showed up? We'd be screwed.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, so
So it'd be physically terrifying just because of the threat involved. It'd be existentially terrifying because of the ramifications spiritually.
spiritually, yeah, mentally, everything, and so like when I think about that, like my personal take on where we could go, like if evolution, if we were completely evolved to evolution's peak, if there's such a thing,
Yeah.
for the third dimension, you know, right? Like if we were to take our physical form to the max capacity of what it could do, like I imagine, like I really don't. It's not an exciting thing for me, like because I think about myself, because like probably one of the most transformative thoughts I have ever had in my head, and I thought of it myself, so it probably hit me in a particular sort of a way, like personally. But is like I imagine myself completely evolved. I'm self-sustaining energy, something, you know,
Right.
whatever it is.
What's
And
in
I'm-
the Watchmen? What is the character?
Dr. Manhattan.
You're Dr. Manhattan?
he
Yeah.
blows my mind.
Like
He's a-
SpongeBob, you filter feed.
Yeah, right.
I gotta make that reference.
And I can
Be awfully boring, wouldn't it?
It really would.
exactly. I find myself knowing everything, all the facts that there are to know. I know,
Right.
and I'm traveling at the edge of the universe as it expands. You know, and I just imagine, because that's the only thing new I could experience.
Right.
Was something that had not existed prior to that moment, and then kind of taking a step, or pausing for a moment and kind of like looking back at where I'd come from, just kind of suspended there,
Yeah.
and having a really empty feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is what it's all for. Kind of, yeah.
Now what?
And yeah, so like for me,
And that's terrifying in and of itself, really.
and like I'm not a Christian because of anything else other than I believe it to be true. Like I don't need to believe in Christianity so because I think the world would operate better with it, or because
There's no ultimatum
I need
to it.
like fill in some sort of debt.
Right.
It's kind of a core, or it
Yeah.
is a core part of who I am.
And I really respect that, too, because that's a reason I think that a lot of people, a lot of times it's almost prescribed and they believe
Yeah.
it because, you've thought about this,
Or
obviously.
this,
Yeah.
yeah. It's deeper for you.
Right.
In other words,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think, and you could go with it in the same direction without necessarily going the God route, but because then you get into interdimensional sort of stuff, and I think that could. This is where my head goes when we talk about this kind of stuff. When you're talking about that.
Well, just based on what you're saying, though, what do you think? Like, because my question of that, and to go on your point of saying, once you know all there is to know, like, so when you look at the concept of heaven, for example, I almost would be willing to say it'd be a similar feeling, right? It's like you're in this blissful place, but once you're there, what more is there? Like there's no more uncertain. There is a certain component of that would instill the emptiness. But I don't know. I mean, heaven is something that transcends probably, comprehension. That's one of the facets, I guess, of religion in general. But
if heaven exists, or if there's if there's a greater understanding to be had than we have right now, I would tend to believe that wherever that is, that there would be work involved.
Work
Yeah.
as in
like an actual other life.
There would be responsibilities.
Yeah.
a purpose.
I think the point of
You wouldn't just be
life
there.
is to learn responsibility.
Yeah.
So I think
Okay.
that is kind of the main vein of.
Yeah.
You think it'd be,
Yeah.
Either going to heaven or
There has to be a
or heaven
future.
on
There has to be a
earth, or if
concept
there's
of.
utopia.
Yeah.
It would come from something
Okay.
like that.
That makes sense.
I like that.
Anyway, so yeah, that's really what life is about, But so to start wrapping things up, I know we could literally go on forever talking about this. I'll end with just a quick question, Johnny. I want to get your thoughts real quick on if you look at that timeline we talked about and all of those kind of milestones, like those, the epiphanies that we had as a civilization. What do you think in general, or not in general, what do you think was the most impactful or significant or just meaningful discovery or step that we had with this? We'll talk, like when we discovered fire, when we discovered the wheel, the Industrial Revolution, the internet, all of these huge points that change, all of these huge with a capital Y, huge things that happened. What do you think is the most? Since you are obviously the most insightful of this.
That's a great question because we have so many to look back on. But I think for me, the biggest was technology. And I say that because...
Well, specifically what? Like digitized technology, you mean? Like computers?
I'll say this.
Our smartphones.
Internet.
Because the wheel is technology, technically.
It's true.
Internet, I think, is one of the most recent and most
Such a
impactful... Well, I mean, think about this.
Before it's a Korean instrument, right?
Before the internet, if you wanted to get an idea out there, what'd you do? You made a flyer, and you put it on a piece of paper, and then you go out and you staple it to a telephone pole, and you tell people, hey, you should check this out. And now we have the internet. We can literally put a VR headset on and talk to our relatives across the world because of the internet.
Still working on it, though, aren't they? It's in
It's
development.
I'm still fist bumping.
So, yeah, no, I know.
Such a perfect-
Matt's been fist bumping like
It's-
That's such a good answer. I mean,
it is. No, I
because
agree.
it opens the doors to so many things that I think that would have to be my answer. The internet is the most to me.
so Al Gore, you're saying, is the most important human that's ever walked. Yeah. Do we even what is the deal there? Who the hell invented the internet?
You know,
Is there
I
ever?
have
Did they ever
no idea.
Somebody needs to create some sort of movement to discover who did it.
As
There's a
crazy
guy.
as
We
it
need an answer.
sounds,
There's
I
a
don't.
guy.
There is a
There's
guy?
a guy,
There's a
but
guy.
Yeah.
Did
Why
he-
the hell is he not on the face of all money and everything? What the hell? Who is it?
It's.
And how do you know this?
Yeah, let's not use this one.
I've actually looked it up before because I was curious, but
It's just gonna mess things up more.
For real? Is there really a guy?
Yeah, there has to
there's
be.
a guy.
Yeah.
There's a guy.
A guy. Like you invented the internet and we can't even name the
Yeah,
guy?
I know, right?
That was the second.
Talk about credit where credit's due, man. Like, how the hell do we not know who this guy is?
Looks like there's two.
He should,
This
like,
guy. So.
that's not the guy.
That's the guy.
He doesn't
That's
look
not him,
important
that's
enough,
freaking-
Probably just ugly. It's probably.
That's probably.
It was obviously the aliens.
right? Obviously.
Yeah.
I was under the impression that it was kind of like a metaphysical.
Oh, I
It's-
don't know.
it's-
1947 Roswell discovered an
I
alien. All
think
of a sudden,
the internet
Oh.
itself is something that we just kind of like fire. We
Transistors.
gained control of it. As weird as that sounds to
Natural
say,
element.
like I wouldn't necessarily say it's a natural element, but I think as
Yeah.
our technology evolved, it was something that like just kind of became intrinsic in the,
Have you ever-
technology, and we just gained access.
Have
to
you
it,
ever
is what we
seen
did.
the studies and these talks where they theorize that civilization keeps getting to that point and then killing themselves, basically?
Basically, yeah.
Our perception of like Egyptians, the pyramids, all that, it's all wrong. Like, there's been theory, like Atlantis and all that, there's been theories. People were like, we get to this point in civilization, then we end up crumbling because we
Just-
kill each other.
Yeah.
And we don't discover it because we blow everything up. There's nothing to
Right.
smithereens. And that's actually a really valid. Because right now, you know what bothers me? If you watch, I was watching last night, literally, every night when I go to bed, I'll play a documentary, right? And I'll just go to
that's a good way to
sleep
fall
with it
asleep.
playing. Yeah. So I always kind of hear these things. So last night, I was staying up and I was watching one of the pyramids, and the woman was talking about it, and it was somebody was asking what are they for? They're great and cool and stuff, but why did they build these? And the answer that they came up with, they were like, okay, well, they're tombs.
Yeah.
But there's no friggin' tombs. There's no bodies. They've never discovered. And it's like, well, we need to figure out why the hell that they were built.
Well,
I'm not okay with us just sloughing it off, being like, well, we think it was tombs.
They've done research on them. I mean, from what I've seen, and they've got they've found that a lot of them have intricate tunnel systems
They
that
do,
run through
yeah.
them. Yeah, and it's
But and there's a lot of they're really stringent on obviously to preserve them and stuff. But we need to look more into
We need to
that.
figure
we need to
out,
figure
like,
out
why
why
they're
all of these
there.
pyramids were built in the
Yeah.
same way and the same star celestial We need to freaking figure out what the hell these people were doing that because there was a purpose.
There had to have been,
They didn't
yeah.
randomly happen to coincide in the exact same proportions and the exact same all across the planet that happened.
yeah, I know. Yeah, it
You know,
happens everywhere.
all across, and I know I sound like that freaking ancient alien guy right now, because but seriously,
But these are, true things.
there has to
Yeah.
have been a reason that all of those things look identical and function identical, and it's just weird, and that's why these theories, that's what brought it up. What they were talking about, it's like maybe that happened, maybe there was civilization that communicated, and we just
Missed it.
screwed up,
Yeah.
and then we had to start over basically. So,
Hmm.
and. Maybe we're, think about it, current
Yeah.
events, are we approaching that? It's weird and scary.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, like Chad said, to think about it. But yeah, internet. I definitely, that's the second NBC. Both trophies go to, we need to build Johnny a trophy case.
Right.
Probably,
Shit.
yeah, I mean, he's definitely batting 1,000 over there. Yeah, so to end it up, thank everybody. We didn't really get much social. We've taken a couple weeks off. By the way, this is totally off topic, but I wanted to thank everyone if they happen to ever listen to this at the Game of Thrones conference. That was the best weekend I've had since college. I kid you not. And women were not in any way whatsoever involved, so that means a lot.
Yeah,
when you
it
can say that was
does.
the greatest weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the biggest nerd fest ever, and it was glorious. And I met the coolest freaking people. Shout out to all of you guys. I love you all. The Duns, Laura, Lauren, Linda, Eric, everyone. I know I'm going to leave people out, but whatever. I love you all. And I can't wait till next year. But, as always, I'm going to end with a poem real quickly that I forgot to write, so I had to write it on the way here today. And I titled this poem Cultural Evolution. And this is how it goes. Traveled around, we used to abound, till one day we learned how to farm. A fire was sparked, and then one remarked, "Hey guys, come under my arm." We fell for this slight, believed his birthright, succumbed to his law and decree. Till finally we fought, and freedom we bought with our blood. Now none bend the knee. And that was it, because I was at a red light when I read it. But
Like the Gettysburg Address written on a napkin.
you know, I kind of, and the bend the knee. I was at the end. I was like, I should say we like something with free, but then I was thinking Game of Thrones and the bend the knee. You know, like Stannis Baratheon. So that was kind of influenced me, but whatever. Anyway, thank you guys as always. If we ever get focused and our ADD goes away, we'll get this whole apparel thing going and our T-shirts and whatnot put out there for availability. But we would love any participation from our listeners, any contributions. This isn't like, I mean, there are no rules or guidelines or this is an open source everything. We're open to any sort of help and, spreading this message and sentiment along so we can all enjoy life and get along. So thank you guys again. I really, really appreciate all of the work y'all have put in and your thoughts. And until next week, we will talk about how the world should work.